Welcome back, everyone. We are glad you're able to join us after a short break. Let me introduce our following moderator, Yannis Ioannidis, President and General Director at Athena Research and Innovation Center, Professor of Informatics and Telecom at National Kapodistrian University of Athens, and Esfri Vice Chair. Yannis, I invite you to moderate the session on contribution of research infrastructures to fight against COVID.
Thank you very much, Angelica. Am I heard well? Can you hear me well?
We can hear you.
Excellent. Okay. So let me share my screen with a few slides. This is the session that exists because we have the speeding online. Because of COVID, we could not enjoy this workshop in March in Zagreb, and now we have, because we had to fight with COVID. So what can research infrastructures help with COVID? And we have an exciting set of speakers. Henriette from the European Commission will be our keynote and will set the stage and how the Commission is addressing things and then the plan for the Commission against COVID. And then we have four panelists, Jean-Louis Romette from Universite Marseille and the European Virus Archive, and Tony Andrew from Atris, representing a cluster of research infrastructures, Nicholas Blomberg, the director of Elixir, and Caterina Biscari from the Alba Synchrotron and LEAPS. And each of them will give us a perspective. They have been given three sets of two questions. The first two sets are going in the opposite directions. Impact of research infrastructures on fighting the COVID, what we have done and what we can do to be prepared in the future. The opposite impact, how the COVID pandemic has impacted the research infrastructures, how we are operating now in the present and what we can do in the future. And then have we come all together? We've had social distancing, but have we had research infrastructure closeness? So have the research infrastructures been collaborated in a multi or interdisciplinary way, because the problem is definitely interdisciplinary? And what has been the roles of infrastructures? What coordination has been between research infrastructures and the European Open Science Cloud? So each panelist will address some of these questions. All of them will be covered one way or the other. And for the audience, or overarching in the panel, there is one question. Research infrastructures, their mission is long-term scientific research. But what is the balance in the services that they should be offering to fight present terms of societal changes? So what is the expected role of research infrastructures in a crisis situation like ours? So that's what I wanted to present for the time being. And I'm calling now Henriette to take the floor and present the European Commission perspective, what are the activities, and I will be managing her slides. So if you give me 1 second to put them forward and start sharing again. Okay. So, Henriette, you are ready, and I will be moving, turning on your slides.
Invitation to this conference, which of course would have been much better if we could talk to each other also during the coffee breaks. But it's already very useful to have all of us all together sharing our ideas in our programs. I am representing here LEAPS. LEAPS is an association of all synchrotrons and fairs from Europe. This means up to 19 facilities plus an associate member, which is SESAME. And we are not a legal entity, but we are working together for the future of Europe and of the world. So, first of all, I want to mention what have been our challenges during the last 2 months, I would say. Of course, we were hit by the need of lockdown all our activities at different levels depending on the country, but all our research infrastructures have been suffering from or a total shutdown or at least a decrease of activity. This meant that in the first weeks we worked mainly to support the staff, also considering the need of family consideration because the schools were closed, extended the smart working, and then we started more or less different levels also to begin an operation. And some of us were always open in case of requests from some group working on COVID-19. The safety measurements for working together have been, of course, increased, but it has given rise already to several experiments going on in our facilities. What we are facing now is a return to a complete operation, but of course it won't be the operation we were used before, at least for at least 1 year, because of the impossibility of users to travel or the difficulty of users to travel. And this implies that we are developing tools which were already there for some of our specifically for some of our techniques, but are developing now and will be developed in the future. And that will help also when we are back to complete normality. And one important thing for all the user facilities is the support to the user community, of course. And there is a document, you find the link in the slide, prepared by ERF, also on an initiative started by Yana, who spoke this morning, of putting together which are the best practice analytical facilities are doing during the pandemic. This is a useful document. What are the opportunities? Of course, one thing that is very clear now to all the society is that science is absolutely essential for the future of the humanity. And this is something that we have to take advantage of. Also an increase in the collaboration. All of us are collaborating with, in Europe, of course, inside LIPS is a clear example, but this is extended now. There was, for example, a summit a few weeks ago, this so-called AOBA summit, in which synchrotrons and FELs from all over the world, from Europe, Asia, Europe, and America, were participating to increase the collaboration, to share without barriers our results. And this is very important. It's an example also for the society and for the politics. And of course, the big opportunity of contributing to the research related to COVID. Most of our facilities are providing rapid access for the groups working on COVID-19. And this has been done all over the world. Where the first proteins were already solved in the month of January by the Chinese, in the Chinese synchrotron of Shanghai. And I can mention, for example, at Alba, we were able to do an experiment with a pharma company, having at Alba only 5 people simultaneously. So with 5 people, we were able to operate the whole synchrotron and the line. There are in preparation by LIPS people webinars, one dedicated to operation, one dedicated to the research which is going on. And there are several results already. I will not go through them in detail, but it's good that they are shown here because I think this is an example of how when things are done in the right way, you can get quick results in a way which is not usual in other fields. because people have joined together all their efforts and all their strength, and there are already results appearing in papers and others which are being worked out. There are also consortium between research infrastructures, research institutions, and also companies working for solving the problems of the COVID-19. And I want to mention here also it was published yesterday, the position paper on COVID-19 of LIPS. You can find it in our webpage. There is also the link in the slide. And it's a position paper in which all the capabilities of LIPS facilities, which are mirroring also what are the capabilities around the world for fighting this COVID-19, are explained in this paper. And it's something which shows that there are many capabilities, but there are also room for improvement. And what we need to do is also to increase the funding and the projects for the future. And this will not be only for the COVID-19, but also for the future threats that can appear as viral threats. Not only LIPS, but also other research infrastructure, for example, LENS, which is the League of Neutron Sources of Europe, have produced a similar paper also. There are all others, analytical facilities, like, for example, the laser community, the ion community, the electron microscope community, which are working also together with us in collaboration. And finally, my last slide is how we are prepared for contributing to the reconstruction. Of course, in this moment, the most urgent problem which everybody is facing is finding a vaccine or cures for the COVID-19. But this is something that is not, this is the most urgent, but is not the only one. We have to develop also strategies for coexisting with the virus. And this implies many different disciplinary and many different scientific fields. This is not COVID-19. And we are there to contribute to the social and economical recovery of our world. And this is something that is possible thanks to our interdisciplinarity, to the development of tools and of instruments in all kind of scientific fields. Of course, one of the problems we are facing is the economic and the social crisis. Therefore, having research infrastructure, as has been explained in the first part of this conference, playing a great role in the education, in innovation, in technology transfers is essential for the future of Europe. And the research infrastructure are an European asset for the reconstruction during and after the crisis. There is an example I have wanted to put here also. For example, we are doing, all the world is doing an experiment that was not meant to be done. It's an experiment that nobody wanted to do, but we have the data from this experiment. What are the real effect of the activity, the human activity, the human mobility on the environment? This is something that now can be really quantified. And the data are there, and it's important that these are used in the future also for solving the great challenge of what comes after. When we talk of Green Deal, when we talk of environment, when we talk of green cities, it's very important that we take into account which are the data that we are having now. For example, one thing that is surprising is that the CO2 emissions are not decreasing as we were expecting due to the shutdown of many of our activities. So it's important that the European Commission, together with the member states, together with the national funding agencies, I remind you that in LIPS, the LIPS facility are all national facilities except two of them, the SRF and the Esfri. So they are all facilities which are not in the Esfri roadmap, for example, but they are European facilities, even if funded by national funding agencies. So it's important to put together the European Commission and the member state to boost the capacities of the RIs in the future. Thanks.
This is great. Thanks a lot, Katerina. Great examples of how research infrastructures can fight and we could move forward. I think that many viruses have hit this session. Not only the title, besides Katerina's coughing, we seem to have lost everyone, but now everyone is back. So I would like also, because of various time constraints, to go back to our keynote, Henriette, and as soon as I share my screen and go to her slides, I will, Henriette, you can start talking. Please, now that everyone is back here, stick to the time. I don't want to try to intervene when you talk. So 10 minutes for Henriette, and I'm sharing her slides. Just give me a second.
So thank you, Yannis, and thank you for the organizers for allowing me to contribute. So I was asked to talk about two topics on research infrastructures in the fight against COVID. So first, around the long-term positive and negative effects on the current crisis on the research infrastructures, and also about the coordination between the research infrastructures and the European Open Science Cloud. And so obviously the main effect on the research infrastructures, and Catherine highlighted this, is really the safety and the well-being of our staff. And I think that will have to be the priority for everyone, is the people involved. But I want to focus today on the scientific aspect. And one thing which is happening and which is very relevant to Elixir, and I'd like to give you two examples before I come back to the questions, is the large-scale genomic studies that are being launched on the COVID virus, or the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and also on the patients, to try to understand the determinants of different outcomes. So this is a quick screenshot of the studies. It's been reported as of yesterday, and you can see that there are many studies on COVID-19 going on in almost all European countries. So it's a big effort. And just to give one example, in Spain, for instance, there are about 10,000 patients being sequenced right now. It's over 20,000 viral sequences being deposited. And so one big challenge for Europe, I think, is how do we actually manage to allow these different national entities to collaborate effectively. As data is growing in each of these studies, people would want to compare and understand the responses, both in different populations and between different countries. And so for Elixir, that's really been one of our main priorities in the early phase of this crisis, is try to help and find ways of allowing our national entities to collaborate. And I think that's the first point I'd like to make here in this session, is really that many of the infrastructures on the Esfri roadmap are distributed. They are built around a whole collection of national facilities. And actually what we have is communities of people who are used to work together and who trust each other and understand how to interface with people working in facilities or data centers in other countries. And I think this can be very effectively leveraged in a crisis like the COVID crisis, and help to mobilize national resources. And so just a few examples from Elixir, and I'm sure there are similar examples from many other research infrastructures, is the front loading. So we've tried to accelerate the implementation of federated data access, where you can either deploy calculation methods on cloud in different countries. So for instance, Spanish researchers can deploy them in Finland, or where you can exchange and download genetic material from sequenced patients in the various countries. I think the other really nice example we've seen on how to mobilize national resources is around cloud. So there's also an international virtual biohackathon around the COVID, mostly around the virus and methods for sequence analysis. And many of the European sort of bioinformatics clouds in France, in Italy, in Spain, in Finland, and in Germany provided a lot of in-kind resources that could be mobilized very quickly for this sort of intense one-week researcher hackathon. So again, I think it shows what the community aspect of research infrastructure and these distributed infrastructures actually can bring. We have just published a paper on our strategy. It came out today in the European Journal of Human Genetics. So I'm not going to say a lot more about the Elexir strategy, but I think this for me is a really important point and perhaps an opportunity for the European research infrastructure landscape is the community aspect of these distributed RIs. The other point I wanted to make is around how we can use research infrastructure to actually collaborate globally. I mean, COVID is not only hitting Europe. Europe has been badly affected, but other regions of the world are equally badly affected. And actually the open science agenda and the open access to data and reproducible analytics, I think is really a enabler for global collaboration. So this is an example which been written up, the link is there, but essentially an example where two groups in Europe, so the Elexir nodes in Belgium and Germany and in US and Australia came together to drive open access workflow and reproducible analytics on the virus genome. So earlier this year, most of the publications around the virus genome did not release the data in open archives. And so it was quite difficult for researchers in many jurisdictions to get access to reference material. And so they came together and actually quite rapidly published a open reproducible workflow to allow people to benchmark what they're doing. But I think the key point for this, and I think that's the learning for this session, is really that these research infrastructures and the structured collaborations we've put up in Europe are really a very, very strong enabler for sort of international and global collaborations. And I just took the logo cloud so we can see a large number of organizations globally coming together and work. And it's actually also, which probably links to my last point on the European Open Science Cloud. We funded part of this from the EOSC Life project. So then to wrap up in my short statement on the positive and negative effects on the research infrastructures. So I think there are opportunities here. I mean, I think the negative effects are in many ways obvious. It's been really difficult in the present circumstances for many of the people involved, and we need to support our people, and that slows down projects with lockdowns. I think there is a significant risk for the future around research budgets, possibly more around restrictions of movement, and possibly most if we get too national a focus and start to limit collaborations, because this is situations that can only be resolved in European and probably global-wide collaborations. There are some real opportunities though, and I think there is a real opportunity to strengthen the link between the research infrastructure and many national research programs. We've seen that in Elexir. I think again it's true probably for most other research infrastructures, that there is a need for the facilities. And we have seen our nodes, for instance, in France, essentially going wholesale to support data management and data submissions. And some of this has also been sort of put up in the recommendations from the Commission on open access guidelines. I think it provides a very strong and important use case that show the value of linking these national data spaces. So we have done that in Elexir around genomics. It's probably, again, true in many other fields where we need to find ways of linking and collaborating around data. What COVID has provided is actually some urgency around this, and I think a very sort of useful benefit risk assessment that overcomes some of the difficulties that we had for some time. If we look at the coordination between research infrastructure and EOSC, I think my first one is that I think that question is wrong or ill-posed. The research infrastructures in Europe, the Esfri research infrastructures, I think should be seen and are a key component of the European Open Science Cloud. They are large, well-organized communities. They have large and often well-organized data components. And I think it's a real missed opportunity if we don't see that as an integral part of the European Open Science Cloud, but something external. So I think that notion of research infrastructures being separated from the European Open Science Cloud, we need to work to remove that notion. That said, I think there are some real opportunities here. COVID have demonstrated the need for federation and collaboration around national data and national located data, so patient data can't leave the organization, the region, or the country. The challenge there has been the federated core of the European Open Science Cloud isn't really mature enough for deployment, and I think we've had to work quite a bit around that. So I think that gives a very useful blueprint use case for the next phase of EOSC. We know now that we need to strengthen the federation. We know now that we need to find ways to collaborate around the national data. And I think that should really help to focus our minds on the priorities for the next phase. So with that, I'll thank you. And thank you, Yannis, for the opportunity to talk and contribute.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. And from your perspective, I have questions and probes and a lot of what you said, but hopefully from our audience, this will come up in the last part of the session. Let me remind you, I'm not sure if it was connected from the beginning of the session. Please, those of you who are attending, ask your questions in general or for particular panelists. We will collect all these and then we will, I will be posing them afterwards, the most popular ones. So please, from your window where you are attending, there is a link on the left or on top, depending on how you look at it. So go and ask your questions so that we can have an interesting interactive session at the end. As we said, the virus, in quotes, has hit this session. So the speakers, the panelists are presenting more or less in the exact opposite direction than they should be. So I'll continue this, I'll go with that. So I'll go next to Tony. Tony, to present us Actress.
Hi, thank you, Yannis. Can you see my?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Anyway, so first of all, because as you see in the program, I'm the scientific director of the Athens, but I'm here also on behalf of two sister research infrastructures, PBMRI, the Biobanking and Biomolecular Resource Research Infrastructure, and the CREN, the European Clinical Research Infrastructure Network. And this is because about 1 year ago, we decided to create an alliance, literally an alliance, putting our resources and our efforts together, because the three of us, members also of the early community, share a common goal. This common goal is to support the research community in finding efficient solutions for unmet medical needs. So this is let's say a joint venture that we started 1 year ago and now is moving forward. And the idea is that during the next couple of years, we will create a strong portfolio of activities and services with the idea of support the European research area for providing solutions for better health. And we are working to develop common and federated education and training programs, partnership with the industry and also the users community, establishing a common strategy for communication, outreach and public affairs, and also developing a specific joint services, also sharing operational resources, implementing a common quality framework, whatever. Because the point is that it became very clear to us that we had an opportunity for working together, become even stronger. That was kind of the idea. In the last 3 months, as medical research infrastructures, pretty much dedicated to provide solutions for solving medical needs. Of course, we've been at the eye of the storm of the COVID crisis, and the 3 of us, we have been trying to structure a common portfolio of specific services that come from our communities to tackle specific challenges that are located in what we consider, and that has been acknowledged by international organizations as the main 3 pillars that will determine and will define the future of the management of the COVID crisis, which is, of course, the development of vaccines, or vaccine. Time will tell, we are talking about one or more than one. Trying to develop efficient treatments, because so far as you know, we have any strong therapeutic approach to the COVID infection, and also putting on the table efficient diagnostic processes. As you know, the European Commission, World Health Organization, Bill Gates Foundation, and national governments, they started a global challenge, a global response that was launched last week with the idea of funding a large amount of money in the development of these 3 pillars. So this is extremely important, because actually this global journey will define the development of the strategy to fight COVID in the future. So I think this quotation that Dr. Ryan, he publicly stated 2 days ago. Mike Ryan is, as you know, the director of the emergency crisis team at WHO, was pretty. We have to think about this, because it is clear that there is not going to be a post-COVID world, and we need to accept this right away. What we are going to have is a post-outbreak situation in a COVID world, because this virus is going to stay with us probably for a long time. And it's quite clear that we are going to move from a pandemic situation to an endemic situation, which is something that has happened in the last couple of centuries many times in the human societies. And unfortunately, we had to learn to live with virus and microorganisms that we just couldn't get rid of them, like flu, like malaria, like HIV, and so on. From the beginning of this crisis, we have learned quite interesting elements that should be, in my opinion, the starting point for defining a strategy in the future. Because of the explosion of the crisis, clinicians, hospitals, healthcare systems from all over the world start investigating the potential clinical efficacy of several treatments. And actually, you may know that now we have more than 3,000 clinical trials ongoing for COVID-19 all over the world. But we have to learn also from lessons from the past. And we know historically that not single hospital, organization, university, whatever, were able to beat other viruses that now we have to live with, like SARS, MERS, Ebola, HIV, and so on. At the background of all this story, it's the issue of quality and reproducibility. And actually, some of the failures, some of the, let's say, the limitations that we had in our capacity for progressing efficiently had to do with the fact that we have created a system in which sharing resources that have the highest level of quality under robust quality schemes is something really difficult. And as you know, research infrastructures and the entire scientific community, we've been discussing for years this concept of the quality and reproducibility crisis. We have pretty close examples in the COVID world. As you know, the serological test that flooded the market in the last couple of months and started being used by policymakers to assess the development of the pandemic. It became very clear that we're not efficient enough because of poor levels of quality. And this is something that we know pretty well in the research infrastructure. And this is something that represents the essence of what we are. cross-border organizations that want to make sure that not only provide services to the scientific community, but provide services with the highest level of quality and reproducibility. The lesson that we have learned in the last couple of months in the domain of the COVID crisis is that it's very clear that single institutions, single organizations, single countries, I would say, do not have the capacity and the expertise to tackle the challenge. I would say almost from practically any perspective, therapy, vaccine, or diagnosis. So in the present and in particular in the future, any strategy to fight against this virus that will never probably go away from our life, at least for quite a few years. Everybody says until the vaccine is available, but well, still we have question marks, quite a few unknowns around that. Will have to be taken this perspective obviously from a multinational perspective. There are very clear actions that have to be taken to define this future. And I think that research infrastructures are organizations that fully embrace these concepts. We need to avoid a global level of scientific community, small and underpowered studies that do not provide enough quality data for making decisions or for moving forward. It's going to be very important for the policymakers to understand this idea, and this is particularly important from the national perspective of the policy making activities, because what we need is to fund large-scale, multinational, multi-sectorial research that is able to provide the resource that we are going to need to move to the future. It's important, I would say essential from now on, that we all agree that researchers, and in particular policymakers, we should change our mind and open completely our doors and exchange information, protocols, reference material, and whatever is necessary to progress into the future. We have also pretty clear example in the COVID crisis, when these serological tests, the rapid tests, were start being implemented into different member states. Different organizations and different member states had particular assessments, individual assessments of the level of efficiency of these tests. This was not shared with other organizations, with other member states, and this has unfortunately slowed down a little bit the progress of what we can do with this kind of diagnostic approaches. It is essential that we move forward in this kind of quality activity. And finally, we need international organizations that are able to facilitate and manage this cross-border research collaboration. We are already here, research infrastructures. We can do that. We have the culture, we have the willingness, we have the operational capacity. So I think we need to encourage the entire society that they use us for moving forward and progressing in the development and in management of the situation. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for exposing in quite a bit of detail of all the actions, past and present and future on addressing this, and from pandemic to endemic. That's something to remember. And last but not least, Jean-Louis, to tell us about Eva G. We're all ears. Please stick to the 5 minutes. Some of the other presentations have went over, and that creates problems. So I don't want to interrupt. Please stick to the 5 minutes. Share your screen. Great. We cannot see or hear Jean-Louis. could the organizers help to be able to see Jean-Louis and also hear him? At least I cannot.
Do you hear me?
Now it is the first time we hear you, yes.
Right, just a problem to share the slides.
It's at the bottom there is a
right,
green
but
screen.
I don't have access to the bottom of the Zoom. Let me see.
Press F5 or F5 will get you the full screen.
Right. Is that okay?
Yes.
Very nice. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
All right, I will go quickly. I'll just, you know who we are. We are this crazy European virologist group, having created a global organization since 2009. And we are now covering a large area. In many cases, we have, for large countries, we have some kind of hubs, local hubs, like in the USA, for instance, we have access to many labs through the University of Florida. In China, our contact point is the Wuhan Institute of Virology. We know them very well. They are very safe, very good people. And I will go quickly so you can identify countries where we are present, Australia and other places like that. Let's go directly to the heart of this discussion, which is, I mean, to be able to react in a case of a crisis, you have to be prepared. And preparedness is really the core of our activity. We are generating a large collection of human, animal, and plant viruses. And today we are the larger organization of this kind in the world. And this is an ongoing process. We are collecting viruses. We characterize those viruses. Usually we sequence the whole genome. And when it's ready, we have a very high quality product that we put on access to the scientific community for research, different kind of research. And from the past experience, we have learned how to exchange material in a fast manner, right? We were in the center of the MERS coronavirus when it emerged in Saudi Arabia. Because of our contact in the Jeddah hospital, we had access to the virus and we were able to produce very quickly, in a couple of weeks, a new PCR assay for this unknown coronavirus. And of course, we have been spreading and sending those kits all over the world to help the people in hospital to fight the disease. It happened again during the Zika outbreak. We were lucky because we had, because of the French Caribbean past history, we had access to Zika virus strains. So we were able to distribute those products very quickly. So what we have as well, because of those 50 institutions being put together inside this consortium, we have access to highly qualified researchers that we can mobilize very quickly. For instance, when you remember maybe that we had a re-emerging of yellow fever in South America, we had to discriminate between the vaccine strain and the vaccine strain and the American wild-type strain present in the body of those people, of the sick people. And of course, this was very useful to cure this disease. So we are producing innovative tools all the time to be up to date when it comes to React. So now concerning the COVID, again, as you know, we had a good contact with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and we have been at a very early stage informed about this outbreak. And as soon as the Chinese team have been publishing the genome sequence, because we had a good collection of coronavirus, we were able to identify that this new coronavirus was in fact a SARS coronavirus with a slight modification. And so we have been proposing to WHO very quickly, on the 12th of January, we started work. A week after, we were able to release a new PCR test, which was published and promoted by WHO in the technical interim guideline. And since that time, we have been facing an increasing number of demands to have access to the product we are proposing on our catalog, right? And when I say a massive number, you have to consider that this is something like 30 to 40 times the number of order we receive. And when this doesn't mean the number of products, it means each product has a potentiality of from 100 to 1,000 assays, which means we have been delivering worldwide a very large number of assay PCR tests mainly. We don't have a serology test available yet. It will come because we have to be very serious in the quality of the product we are going to release, and we have to qualify those products. And recently we had a very strange request due to the shortage of available kits on the market. And for instance, Guatemala directly ordered us 70,000 tests. They say, we don't have any way to test the people in our country, we need help. And so we have been providing those tests to Guatemala, and we received an acknowledgement of the Minister of Health for this nice action. I mean, all those tests were sent free of charge, of course, as most of the tests which are here as well. You see, TNA means free of charge. Non-TNA means that they are paying excess. Now, what about the future? I mean, the future of, for me, we will have very, very quickly a problem with research infrastructure when it comes to biobanking. You cannot profitable when you do biobanking. And you see the last point, to create a condition for sustainable source of funding independent of call for project. In fact, we are existing since 2009 because we had every 4 or 5 years a call for project to which we were able to apply for funding. And we got those funding. So it was good, but it's not good for the future, because tomorrow, if we don't have access to those calls for project for any type of reason, we may disappear. Simply, we may disappear. And I think we have to think about this. And we have to, when you create such an infrastructure, you have also to create the future, its sustainability. And it cannot be a problem of selling product. We cannot be profitable in any way. The other point which is important is coordination. I think we should be more effective in coordinating action. Just before my talk, we were discussing about clinical trial. And for instance, obviously we can be very useful to organize to help to organize clinical trials, because we have access to high quality product, and this can be a big add-on to those clinical trials if they have a good system to detect the virus and to follow the cohorts they have enrolled in their project. And I think coordination is also a missing part in this whole story. I think that's all.
Great. Thank you very much, Jean-Louis, for showing this different slant of an infrastructure and how you can help globally from Europe. So our keynote was not able to connect in any meaningful way. So we are done with the panel, and you have sent a bunch of questions. Given the overall schedule issues that we've had all day, we will not have a 25-minute question and answering session, but we will go with questions to the panel on a couple of your questions. And don't remember the overarching question, the guiding question. What is the role of research infrastructures in balancing off their long-term research mission versus serving short-term crisis situations? The panelists may answer that if they want. I would like to get their opinion. We are left with 3 because Nicholas had declared that he could leave. So could you answer this guiding question briefly, please, so that we can get 1 or 2 more questions in the discussion for the sake of our audience. So the 3 of you, if someone wants to take a stab at long-term research versus short-term crisis.
Well, if I can start, I think one of the challenges that we have on the table is that although we belong to a single community, Europe, we have 27 different strategies, because most of the strategies in managing specific challenges are located at the national level, and particularly in the health domain. So the research infrastructures, they have created the framework that breaks the national boundaries, has fed this culture for, I would say, more than collaboration, for cooperation and establishing permanent relationships with no borders in a completely European perspective. Which means that in the process of building Europe, and this is the COVID crisis is the perfect challenge, because the lack of coordination between the 26 different strategies has probably increased the pressure on the reality of the European society. So I think that the point is we are the proof of concept that cross-border stable cooperation is the way to move forward, and research infrastructures can provide clues to the entire society on how to do this.
Great, transnational cross-border collaboration.
Right.
Katerina, you want to address this, or Jean-Louis?
Yeah.
Okay, Jean-Louis, go ahead.
Yeah, right. To go in the same direction than Tony, I think he's mentioning cross-border collaboration. Should be more than this. To my point of view, it should be really international collaboration. That there is no way, in virology at least, to select a number of countries to do kind of research. It should be really international, and we should share as much as we can all the information we can have. For instance, today for the COVID, it's an excellent example. By chance, the Chinese are very collaborative to send all the data they have to the Western world to help us to fight the disease, because they have been in advance for this disease. And infrastructure can be one of the platforms to receive those information and to produce tools for the end user, who can be the scientist, who can be the politician, we can be all. So I think, I mean, it's really a cornerstone. I mean, infrastructure are a cornerstone in those type of montage, those type of arrangement.
Katerina?
Yes, of course, we are already working in collaboration. I think this is has been highlighted also by the others. This is the most important part, to be open and to collaborate and to share what are our results and what data. This is very important. And as also mentioned during my short introduction at the beginning, we have a urgent need of solving some problems, but we are facing a long period, and what comes after, as Tony said, we will go from pandemic to endemic. What comes after needs the common collaboration and cooperation of different kind of infrastructures. This is something that we are already working also together with the other analytical facilities in Europe. there is a working group working on viral threats for the future. Here there are not only photons, neutrons, but also lasers, as I said before, and cryo microscopes and ion. And working together and having the cooperation together also with the other regions is essential for the future. And not only on the part corresponding to the biosafety or medical research, but for all the other kind of research also it's essential. What we have to learn from the present crisis is that we have to change our way of working and of interacting with the other part of the world. And here is very important, because when we talk of research infrastructure, we talk more or less of the north of the world. And we don't see also what comes from the other regions. And I mean, for example, Africa. We need to have them on board, and we need to provide them tools for which they can also contribute, and they will be a great advantage for the world. There is a program, a project, which is the so-called African Resource. Up to now is just a dream, I would say, but a dream which is taking shape as a synchrotron, which will be done on the model of Sesame, with collaboration of many countries from Africa, and of course with collaboration with Europe. And I think it's very important also to take into account that we have to be really global. It's not only global in the regions which are advanced, but global with the whole world.
Okay, well, you answered, most of your answers were addressing one of the other questions that have come from the audience on collaboration, which is a very important and key thing. But also I could see the line, and I never thought of it, that addressing a crisis, present day crisis, becomes a longer term research issue. And Katerina, you mentioned that, Tony, and so on and so forth. So the two missions are kind of, they are not two distinct things, but they are a spectrum that you move from one to the other, which is a great, thank you very much. Okay, I'll go to one more question and then we'll wrap up. I mean, we'll close, there's not to wrap up. It's a long question, but I'll capture the essence of it. It says, do you see the need for a new research infrastructure on collecting health and relevant non-health data of European citizens related to COVID-19 explicitly? How can this impact future developments? And there are some other elements that are not asked. Do we need a new research infrastructure focusing on COVID-19 data explicitly, with the existing ones, of course, collaborating and participating? But do we need a new one? Jean-Louis.
I'm not sure we need a new research infrastructure. What we need is a coordination body, right? The tools are there, right? So the toolbox is there too. What we need is somebody to coordinate the action of those research infrastructure to reach a target. And it's really what, I mean, it's my impression when I see how many people have been working on COVID-19, and in fact, to tell you the truth, we have not been so efficient just because there were a lack in coordination.
Yeah, fragmentation was also brought up by one of the other questions.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah,
Tony.
Fully agree. We don't need to increase the level of fragmentation that we already have. We need to go exactly on the other way around. And what we need also is that the policymakers that made the right decisions, and in particular the field of the COVID crisis, the public health domain, they need to know that there is a support body called research infrastructures that they can provide strong support in the policy-making decisions that they perform. And actually, in the field of public health, we have a very particular problem in Europe, that the fact, two problems. First, that the public health policies that affect management of transmissible diseases depend from the member states. And the European body, which is the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control, the CDC, the European version of CDC in the US, do not have a research agenda, do not have a research support, but they have us. So we should convince the policymakers to use us because we have the capacity of coordinating, we have the willingness, we just need the support of our policymakers to move forward.
Yeah.
Katerina, if you have something to add.
I agree. We don't need an extra research infrastructure. We need to upgrade and to develop what we already have. We have to develop on the basis of what is already available and which is already working. And of course, Nicholas would have been useful also on this question. But I agree with the other speakers. It's not a new one. It's extending what we have already.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, all the panelists, for their short presentations and answers to the questions and the interesting discussion. Thank you all to the audience for being here, for asking the questions, and also to the organizers. I want to bring this session to a close and go on to the next one on white paper. Thank you very much to all of you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Yes, yes.